So in this video, I'm going to explain the toxic, destructive thing that is destroying most men's dating lives, but not only their dating lives, but more importantly, their careers, their mindset, their ability to focus, their ability to to pull pleasure and happiness from life. I mean, this thing is destroying life for most men. Okay? So if you've ever wondered why you can't get motivated, why you can't focus, why you feel zero drive in your dating life or your career, or why you can't stick to a specific path of action for any real length of time, listen up, okay? Because today we are going to dive deep into dopamine and what most people don't know about it. And I'll explain how it's destroying your desire to approach women, your desire to improve your career, your ability to consistently move forward in your dating life. It destroys everything that is meaningful in a man's life, okay? So first and foremost, I want to explain things at a high level. I want you to imagine this pot analogy. So you have this big pot, and inside there's water. And so when you add more water inside, eventually it gets to a point where you start to boil over, and that boiling over leads to you winning in other areas of life. Well, how do you add the water? Well, it comes down to things like your focus, things like your overall health, things like your internal masculine hormones, things like testosterone that just make you more fired up and ready to go attack the world. It comes down to things like your knowledge, things like your annoyance and your pain with your current position in life, and how that pain pushes you to want to go out and improve. All of these things, they are water that pours into that pot to make the pot get bigger and start to boil. And so the thing is that when this pot gets big enough, when it gets high enough, when the water gets high enough and starts to boil, well, that boiling water is pure action energy that manifests outward into the rest of your life in the form of you moving forward in other areas of your life. That boiling water manifests outward into you going out and talking to women, going out and improving your fitness, going out and working harder on your career, going out and being able to actually focus for hours and hours on end towards something that moves your life forward. That is the natural endpoint of when you have this filled up water. It is the most important, the most vitally important thing that you could possibly have in your life as a man. It changes everything. The issue for most men is that this pot that literally impacts every single area of their life, that pot, the one that determines who they'll be with long term, whether they'll ever have their dream girl, whether they'll ever have their dream friends, their dream life, their dream business, whether they'll actually be able to focus and build a life that they enjoy living. This pot that determines every single aspect of their life, it has holes in it and the water's dripping out. How? Well, things like porn, things like constant scrolling, things like not getting enough sleep at night. They're literally just wide open holes at the bottom of that pot where all of the water is being leaked out. And again, if the pot leaks, you don't grow. What the boiling water in the pot signifies is your ability to go out there and conquer, go out there and attack. When the water boils and when the water reaches the top, that water flows out and channels into other areas of conquest in your life. The boiling water simply signifies that you are out there doing things in life. But we waste it. We waste that life force energy. We waste that source. We waste that power. And you stay stuck. So let's talk about why. All right. So here's the thing about it. Dopamine is in order to build a new life, an amazing life, you need two things. You need to have the ability to focus, and you need to have the motivation. Okay? When you have those two things, you are going to move forward in a new direction quite quickly. Okay? Now, the thing about it is that most people's dopamine balance is completely destroyed, and dopamine heavily plays into your ability to focus and your motivation, okay? So here's the simple formula that most people overlook. Dopamine is absolutely crucial for focus, motivation, social desire, sexual desire, and also even for that sharpness and mental clarity that you get in your brain. But in our modern world, well, everything from late night gaming to late night scrolling to fast food to social media feeds to everything is just designed to destroy our dopamine balance, to destroy our brain's reward pathways. Okay? And when those things are destroyed, again, it destroys your motivation and your focus. And when those are destroyed, you have no staying power to stick in the game of whatever area of life it is that you're trying to improve currently. You have no sticking power in dating. You have no sticking power in your career. You have no sticking power in the gym. It all comes back down to dopamine. Now, what are some examples of holes in this metaphorical pot that we're talking about? Well, pornography. It's one of the biggest ones. Social media. All of the infinite scrolling and the quick dopamine hits just constantly destroying your brain. Fast foods. All of the excessive palatable junk that's just full of calories but full of nothing else. Quick pleasure spike that throws your dopamine off. Always listening to music, just constantly needing that background stimulation. And side note here, if you are in a state where you just constantly need something to entertain yourself, whether it be music, social media, you're never doing nothing. You can never just sit in silence. Well, that's a sign, a very strong sign that your dopamine is fucked. Okay? What are some other holes in the pot? Zins, nicotine supplements, all the stimulants, alcohol, video games, poor sleep. All of these things, again, they're destroying your motivation, your ability to focus, your energy. They're all connected, and they all destroy the pot that leads to a better life. Okay? Now, let's talk a little bit about how dopamine works at a high level, because most people don't truly understand it. So, dopamine is a neurotransmitter within the brain, and what that means is that the brain dumps it at different levels within the brain, and it's the chemical that gives us the feeling of pleasure, but also the feeling of having the desire to go out and pursue more in life. Okay, so when dopamine is present in healthy levels within the brain, well, we feel pleasure, but we also feel the desire to go out and do things. Okay. Now, the thing about it is that dopamine, it exists at a baseline level most of the time, at a pretty steady baseline. Not too much is changing. Boom. And typically, back in the traditional ages, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, well, the entire reason for dopamine is to allow us to survive as a species. Okay. Now, when we eat food, dopamine is released. When we see an animal to hunt, dopamine is released. When we are talking to a girl who we want to mate with and have sex with, dopamine is released. When we have sex, dopamine is released. So traditionally, dopamine was a tool that allowed us to do the things that allowed us to prosper as a species. It was a tool that allowed us to survive. Now, in the modern day and age, the issue is that these massive companies where they have doctors and scientists who are well aware of your brain's patterns, well, they design things in a way that takes control of your dopamine pathways and gets you addicted. Makes them money, but you're left addicted and weak. So what that looks like is fast foods, pornography, video games, social media, dating apps. They all give you these spikes of dopamine. Spike, 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 spike. And the issue with this is that when your brain has this spike of dopamine, well, you feel great for a second, for a moment, but after a spike, you don't go back to your baseline, you go down below it. So you go from a high level of dopamine down to a low level. High level, low level. What are the issues with this? Well, again, dopamine is heavily linked to your focus, to your motivation, to your ability to feel sharp, to your level of social desire. If you want to actually go talk to people, if you want to actually go talk to women, it's linked to all of that. So if you have a quick 5 minute spike and then you go crashing down below your baseline for multiple days after that, well, now you are lacking motivation, you're lacking social desire, you're lacking your mental sharpness, you're lacking your focus. I've made this analogy before. You're choosing to take the poison and to shoot it into yourself. You're choosing. No one else is doing. You're choosing that. So that's where most guys are, destroying themselves. And again, like the science of this, I'll attach a bunch of different studies down below that explain more about this. But I promise you, this is all linked deeply into science. One of the quotes that I love from Dr. Anna Lembke, she was a guest on Andrew Huberman's podcast about 2 years ago. And what she essentially said was that after you have these large dopamine spikes, you don't recover and go back to baseline after an hour, after a day. No, it can take up to a month for you to really recover and get to a healthy dopamine level. So what's the point? Well, the point is that if you're just constantly giving yourself these spikes and these crashes, these spikes and these crashes, these spikes and these crashes, well then, if that's been going on for months, years, maybe decades, I mean, think about it, bro. Like, when did you start watching porn? When did you start scrolling social media? When did you start staying up late at night? Like whatever your vice is, when did you start doing that? Okay, it's been a long time. And when did you last stop doing whatever it may be for at least a month? Probably never. And if you have, it's probably been a while. So if we know that dopamine is the tool that allows us to have focus, that allows us to have social desire, that allows us to have motivation, that allows us to have, all of these important things in our life, if dopamine does those things, and we also know that poor sleep, that pornography, that video games, that social media scrolling, that fast food, if we know that those things destroy dopamine levels, and we also know that we've been doing those things for a long time now without any long break, and we also know that it takes at least a month for our brain to recover after consistently engaging in these things, well then it would be fair to say that if you've been doing those things for a long time, that you may have never even seen what your potential is. You've never seen what you're capable of. You've never seen who you really are. You don't know whatever your name is, you don't know who you are. You don't know who you could be at your best. I pulled up Dr. Anna Lembke's quote. She's the author of Dopamine Nation. It's a very powerful book. Her quote is, "If we expose ourselves chronically to substances or behaviors that repeatedly release large amounts of dopamine in our brain's reward pathway, we can change our tonic baseline and lower it over time, as our brain tries to compensate for all that dopamine, which really is more than we were designed to experience." Okay, the key part here is if we expose ourselves chronically to substances or behaviors that repeatedly release dopamine. So if we're consistently exposing ourselves to high dopamine activities, porn, video games, social media, fast food, all of that stuff, Netflix, if you're consistently exposing yourself to those things, we can change our tonic baseline and lower it over time. Okay, so you are changing your baseline state of dopamine and lowering it for the long haul. Okay? Because our brain isn't designed for that. Another quote from Andrew Huberman is that there is a pool of dopamine that is synthesized, and you can only release the dopamine that is ready, the ready releasable pool. A big part of the pleasure-pain balance hinges on how much dopamine there is ready to be released into the system. Now, it should make perfect sense why if you take something or do something that leads to huge increases in dopamine, well, afterward, your baseline is going to drop because there isn't enough dopamine around to keep your baseline going. So what Andrew Huberman said here is that when you have these big spikes of dopamine, you only have a certain level of dopamine in your body that's ready to be released at any point in time. So afterwards, that's why we have that crash below baseline. Okay? Now, another quote from Andrew Huberman was that people are spiking their dopamine with so many different activities throughout the week that their baseline is progressively dropping. And in this case, it can be very subtle. But when it reaches a threshold of low dopamine, you just feel like you can't get pleasure from anything anymore. So what he's saying here is that people, without even realizing it, they oftentimes just spike their dopamine, spike it again and 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 again, time after time after time with all of these activities. And we don't realize how deeply inundated we are into this process until it's too late. And then we're just kind of floating through life and we're not sharp and our words aren't clear and we're just not on fire anymore. It's like a haze is around us. And not only are we not on fire, not only are we not completely ambitious, not only are we not at our best, but nothing really feels too pleasurable anymore. Nothing really feels too fun anymore. And again, it all links back to dopamine. Like it's the key here. And one more quote from Dr. Lembke. 30 days is, in my clinical experience, the average amount of time it takes for the brain to reset reward pathways, for dopamine transmission to regenerate itself. Imaging studies show that our brains are still in a dopamine deficit state 2 weeks after stopping the drug. She says the drug, but the same thing applies to addictions. The same thing applies to social media. The same thing applies to Netflix, to pornography, to alcohol. This episode was specifically in regards to all types of addictions. So this isn't just for drugs. This is also for addictions. Continuing on, a study by Shockett and Brown took a group of depressed men who were also addicted to alcohol. After 4 weeks with no alcohol, 80% of them no longer met the criteria for major depression. There was a group of men who were depressed and addicted to alcohol. After 4 weeks with no alcohol, no other treatment, just no alcohol, they were no longer depressed. The quote continues, by depriving ourselves of this high dopamine, high reward substance or behavior, porn, social media, poor sleep, fast food, poor behavior, we allow our brains to regenerate its own dopamine. And then we're in a place where we can enjoy other things. Dopamine is everything. Okay. Let me scroll down to my next points. So, how this affects your dating life. We oftentimes wonder why we can't approach people, why we don't have confidence, why we don't have drive. But again, like the pot analogy from earlier, if our fuel tank is just constantly on empty, or it's artificially spiked and then it falls back below empty, well then how are you going to muster up the courage, the energy to go out, socialize, and invest in deeper relationships? Like, again, you're just draining the pot. All the water is coming out. And when our default behavior is just chasing fleeting dopamine from easy sources, we are literally training our brains to expect massive spikes with minimal or no output. And think about that. Like if you were raising a kid and every time they clapped their hand, you gave them $1,000. Well, once they turned 18, do you think that they would get a job? Do you think they would go to college? Or would they just keep on clapping their hands and expecting $1,000? Well, the same thing applies when it comes to dopamine, when it comes to your dating life. If you've been trained since you were 13, 14 years old to just watch porn, and that when you watch porn, you get sexual release. Well, you've trained your brain into seeing that pornography is the $1,000. Going out and approaching women, no, that's weird. I can get it for free. I can get it by just clapping my hands. That's what's happened. And the same thing carries over into other areas of life because the brain doesn't know what money is. Your subconscious doesn't know what money is. And your subconscious is what controls most of your actions in life, 80% of your actions in life. It doesn't know what money is, but it does know what pleasure is, and it does know what dopamine is. And so if you have trained yourself into getting easy pleasure in any area of your life, well, then your brain is going to pursue easy pleasure in all areas of your life. Because again, the brain, I've said this before, the brain is a heuristics machine. It looks for the easiest path and the easiest patterns. Because the brain uses a lot of calories, and 5,000 years ago, we couldn't afford to spend calories wastefully. So it searches for the easy way, searches for the shortcuts, searches for the quickest path. And if our brain knows that dopamine historically has been good, and you're getting dopamine from social media, from video games, from late night binge sessions, from all the BS, well, then it's going to keep pursuing the easy paths. And I mean, the sad truth is that in this modern day and age, like the men who truly perform at a high level in life, they're not the men who are just innately better. No, like the modern day battlefield is simply having ownership of your brain. That's it. Like when you control this thing, that's when you win. That's the modern age coming to manhood. That's the modern age battlefield. It's not out there. It's not out there in the snow, out there in the world. No, it is right here. And most men fail, not because of what's out there, but because of what's in here. What they've chosen to put in here. So, again, the issue is that instead of allowing the masculine life force, the focus, the ambition, the energy to just fill your pot and boil over into actual achievements like forging real confidence, forging real skill sets, getting new experiences, talking to people, going out and taking risks, building that new business, moving to the new city. Instead of doing all of those things, you're just draining your potential every single day with these cheap dopamine hits. I'm making so many pauses and like just looking deep into the camera because like I want you to really get this through your head, man. Like this holds so many guys. It held me back for so long. It's probably holding you back, especially if you're still here watching at this point. It's probably holding you back. So please, like, be honest with yourself and look in the mirror and say, dude, like, am I my own worst enemy? Am I killing myself? Because you probably are. Okay? So the thing about it is that it's not easy to change. It takes time. It takes effort. It takes consistency. But the first step is to look in the mirror honestly and say, okay, well, yeah, I am my own worst enemy. This is my fault. Because most guys just delude themselves, which I've talked about in other videos. You know, most guys just delude themselves consistently. And if you delude yourself, well, then you won't see that there's even a problem in the first place. And if there's no problem, well, then there's nothing to solve. There's nothing to change. So delusion is the core enemy. But from there, the first step is to ask yourself, what are my biggest holes? What is my number one quick fix dopamine habit? Is it pornography? Is it video games? Is it the phone that you can't put down at night? Is it the blue light on your TV late at night? Is it bad sleep? And side note, bad sleep isn't something that gives you dopamine. It doesn't give you a dopamine spike. But I include that in this because it still destroys your focus and it still destroys your ability to recuperate your dopamine. So it still factors into this. Okay. But I'm sure that there's going to be some geek out there like, sleeping badly doesn't give you a dopamine spike. Bro, shut the fuck up. Anyways, think critically on what the activity is The key activity, whatever it may be, that is holding you back and giving you those little dopamine spikes. Okay? And then from there, go for the hard next step that's going to change your life. What is that hard next step? 30 days of fasting from that activity. Again, what Dr. Lembke said, and what there's a plethora of neurochemical research, neurochemistry research that backs this up. But her quote is, most of the time, it takes a minimum of 30 days to reset those reward pathways. 30 days. You don't have to quit everything at once, but pick a major leak, like porn or social media, and cut it out for 4 weeks. Track how your mood, motivation, and focus change. Okay? Just cut it out for 30 days. And I promise, like, from my own experience, bro, like, I was living in Romania back in 2022, September, October of 2022. And during that time, I did a dopamine fast. I made a video actually way back then, but I did dopamine fast for 7 days. Dopamine fast completely for 7 days. I was not using my phone much. I was not using social media at all. Like, I was just completely fasted from dopamine. And what I noticed very, very quickly is that, number one, I had complete and utter focus. Like, I felt more present than I'd ever felt in my entire life. And it was beautiful. Just stupidly beautiful. Number two, I had this burning fire deep in my soul every day to just go out there and attack, get things done in life. And again, immediately prior to this, I had been in this state where I wasn't sticking to my actions consistently. I wasn't consistently doing the work. I wasn't consistently going to the gym. I was like a ghost just flowing through life. And as soon as I started doing it, it changed instantly. The other impacts, well, there was a lot. But I recall specific, like, people worry that doing all of this will make life boring. And the thing about it is, like, there was one day in particular when I did this dopamine detox back in 2022, where I woke up in the morning, no phone. I had some breakfast in my apartment, walked downstairs, went to the gym, worked out, no music, just in the gym, working out, cranking the weights, already feeling amazing, already feeling focused, already feeling present. I see some people there, so I talk to them, have a conversation. They're smiling, I'm smiling, everybody's present. I go downstairs, get in the sauna, no music, just existing. There's peace, there's clarity, there's focus. I'm here in the moment. I'm not there, I'm here. Then I go outside and I sit down in front of the gym and I start getting some work done. I'm just sat down there getting some work done. Complete and utter focus. No distractions, no BS, just completely there in the moment. The deepest focus that I've had in a long time, in a long time. And then the girl that I was dating at the time out there in Romania, she happens to walk into the gym and she sees me, I see her, she walks over, we start talking. I'm not overthinking, I'm not in my head, I'm not thinking of the perfect thing to say. Everything just flows. It just comes. Like water, like a river. Usually back then I would be overthinking, I'd be thinking of what to say, I'd be thinking of all the random bullshit. But no, there was not a single thought in my mind except that present moment. She worked out, we got in the sauna again together. We go, watch a movie together. And it was such a simple day. I touched my phone for less than 7-8 minutes that day. And literally now, it is February 18th of 2025 as I'm making this video. That was back in October of 2022. Until this day, 3 years later, 2.5 years later rather, that still sits in my mind as one of the best, as one of the best days. I'll be honest, as the best day in my life in the past 5-ish years. I've been on better dates. I've been with more beautiful girls. I've gotten more work done. I've made more money. But the simple aspect of having complete and utter focus in my brain, no distractions, no chaos, being fully present, that's what made that day so amazing. And so people worry that, like, as they go down this path, won't I be too boring? Won't people think I'm weird? Number one, it won't be boring. It's going to be the most pleasurable time of your life once you're into it. The most real time of your life once you're into it. And number two, if you do this the right way, well, then you'll no longer need the fake. Because having a real beautiful girl in your life, having real friends in your life in front of you, not behind a screen, but in front of you, having an amazing physique when you look into the mirror every night, having a full bank account. I mean, having these things is 1,000,000,000,000 times better than any level of virtual fake bullshit. I promise you. Like, I've been broke. I've done the porn. I've done the video games. I've done the TV watching. I've done watching the news. I've done the music. It's all vaporous. It's all escape. The fullness is in a real life. There was a video from Andrew, and I'm beginning to ramble at this point, but you guys understand my point. But there's a video from Andrew Huberman. I believe it was along the lines of, I forget the exact name of the video, but it's along the lines of sources of happiness. I forget the exact name. But essentially, one of the key points in the video was that one of the things that was most heavily correlated with having a high level of self-perceived happiness and self-perceived life satisfaction wasn't money, wasn't sex, wasn't relationships, that, like, all those things help. But one of the most important things, it was called synthetic happiness. Okay, synthetic happiness. So one of the most important things was simply, they noticed that people who had one specific task on their mind and nothing else rated themselves the highest in self-perceived happiness and satisfaction. What does that mean? Well, they had groups of people, and one group of people, they were doing tasks that they didn't even necessarily enjoy. But while doing that task, they were completely focused. So, for example, they would be doing the dishes or cleaning up, a task that they didn't enjoy, but they were completely focused with no distractions at all. And the other group, they would be doing tasks that they actually enjoyed, but they would allow themselves to get distracted if they wanted to. So social media, getting distracted by some bullshit over there, scrolling on their phone, music, doing tasks that they enjoyed, but allowing themselves to be distracted if that was the case. And what they found was that the first group, the group that was fully fixated on their task, even if the task was not a task that they enjoyed, well, they had much higher rates of self-perceived happiness. The idea here is that happiness, satisfaction, they're not so deeply connected to how great a task is, how fun a task is. They're more so connected to how deeply we allow ourselves to be present while doing the task. And this roots back to your dopamine and your overall life, because, well, while you're doing these tasks that aren't stereotypically enjoyable, again, if you're fully there, if you have control over your mind, if you have a clean dopamine pathway and you're not addled in the brain and you haven't destroyed your dopamine transmission, if you're healthy mentally, well, then those hard tasks become more fun, more enjoyable, more meaningful, more fulfilling than the easy tasks. And that, my friend, is when life changes. So anyways, that's the video for now. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you need help in dating or in building a life of deeper fulfillment, I have a link in my description where I will spend 20, 30 minutes on a call with you for free and just dive deep into your situation, tear you apart lovingly, and help you to build a better life. It's specifically designed for dating, but dating is kind of the hook that I use to reel men in. Because I know that for most men, for myself, for my past self, when I was 19, 20, 21, I wanted beautiful, 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 beautiful girls. And looking back now, I know that if you would have told me that, hey, if you do this, you'll get beautiful girls, well, then I would have did whatever you told me to do. So my way of hooking men into the idea of becoming better men and focusing on self-improvement is by teaching them how to get better girls. That's my hook. But the main purpose is to help you to become a better man. Okay? So if you need help, click down below, book a call. I will offer you my program if you seem like a good fit, a guy who has no ego, who actually does the work, who is, focused heavily on self-improvement. If that's you, then I'll help you. But if not, I won't even offer it to you because it's a waste of time. But regardless, I will kick you in the ass and help you to grow. Okay? So book a call down below if you want to. Regardless, gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this video. There was a lot of value in here. And if you actually paid attention and took notes and applied this stuff, I promise you, bro, like this stuff alone has the power to change your life. So get out there and go take over. God bless. Godspeed. I'll see you guys next time.